Copyright disclaimer. Under Title 17 U.S.C. Section 107, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing nonprofit, educational, or personal use. Tips the balance in favor of fair use. This is in British Columbia. Abuse and harassment survivors silenced by non-disclosure agreements fight for change to BC law. PEI brought in legislation to limit use of NDAs, and BC's Attorney General says change is possible here. By Bethany Lindsay, CBS News, dated July 23, 2022. Susan McRae is part of a global campaign to end the use of non-disclosure agreements in cases of abuse, discrimination, and harassment. Trigger warning: this article contains references to sexual abuse and may affect those who have experienced abuse or know someone affected by it. Not even the death of her father could free Susan McRae from the legal restraints that prevent her from talking about the sexual abuse she allegedly suffered as a child. What do you mean, allegedly? I think that's already been established. 4 years ago, a BC judge dismissed McRae's application to nullify the non-disclosure agreement. You guys see what's going on, right? She'd signed in 1997 as part of a legal settlement, court documents show. Not only that, McRae was ordered to pay her father's estate $500 in court costs. It's so insulting, the Vancouver woman said. You guys see what they just did? I believe her father was a perpetrator. Though she is legally forbidden to speak about what happened to her when she was a child, what are they going to do, put you in jail? McRae's 84-year-old mother, Marie, is not, and has confirmed McRae told her about the alleged sexual abuse long before the NDA. Take that. And here's another one I probably should check out. CBC investigates use of NDAs has created culture of silence, kind of like the wall of silence in the police forces, and fear. Fear. On UPEI campus, former professor says. It's always the former ones that talk freely, isn't it? You ever notice that? Now they've both joined a fight to have the provincial and federal governments bring in legislation that would severely limit the use of non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, banning them entirely in case of abuse, harassment, and discrimination. People cannot heal if they are still silenced about what happened to them, McRae said. We don't want NDAs to be misused. Yeah, Rinder. The movement is quickly picking up steam in Canada. Just this spring, Prince Edward Island officially became the first province to limit the use of NDAs, and similar legislation has been introduced in Nova Scotia and Manitoba. In BC, representatives of the anti-NDA Can't Buy Me Silence campaign say they've been meeting regularly with government staff. A spokesperson for the Attorney General's office told CBC in an email that the ministry is watching developments in other provinces to see whether any changes should be made to BC law. We know non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality agreements can serve useful roles when used appropriately, but we don't want NDAs to be misused to silence survivors of harassment, abuse, and discrimination, the email said. Julie McFarlane is one of the co-founders of Can't Buy My Silence campaign to strictly limit the use of NDAs around the world, CBC. What's the lady's name at Child USA? Marsha A. Clark. She might want to know about this one. The Can't Buy Me Silence campaign was launched by Juliet McFarlane, a professor emerita in the law department of the University of Windsor in Ontario, and Zelda Perkins, a former assistant to disgraced movie producer, because you know there's so many of them, and sexual predator Harvey Weinstein. Another fall guy right there. Both have personal experiences with NDAs. Perkins broke hers to speak out about what she experienced and witnessed while working for Weinstein. McFarlane sued the Anglican Church over her sexual abuse by a minister, and during settlement negotiations convinced the church to end its practice of using NDAs in similar cases. Oh, so isn't that a big surprise that the churches are using them? Huh. She said NDAs have been increasingly common in the academic world and employment disputes, becoming pervasive and normalized within the last decades. It's because our world is full of predators. I mean, it always had predators, but it's everywhere now. Those who've signed them in case of abuse and harassment told CBC they were made to believe it was the only way to settle their complaints. Isn't it blackmail? So lawyers are blackmailing the victims now, of course. The goal of McFarlane's campaign is to make sure these agreements are only used for their original purpose, to protect trade secrets from competitors in the business world. She believes that in post-Me Too world, restricting NDA is critical to ensuring wrongdoers are held accountable. Yeah. If you end up signing an NDA, which enormous proportions of these cases end up with, you haven't really achieved anything. The person who will have done the misdeeds is free to continue, maybe in a different workplace, and most often the person who brought the original complaint will be out of a job with a small payment which will only last so long, McFarlane said. It's absurd that they're legal at all. Yeah. She pointed out that victims who sign NDAs related to their work are often shut out of future employment because they can't explain why they left their last job. That's what happened to a BC woman who signed an NDA in 2020 to settle a human rights complaint alleging relentless sexual harassment by her boss at a large public body. I'll bet the boss is still there. How much you guys bet he's still there doing the same crap? And you know what? He didn't give it any punishment. The woman whom CBC is not identifying because of the potential legal repercussions said it would have been impossible for her to find a new job in the same field after her settlement. I wonder how many more predators are in those various companies hiding behind all those NDAs. Might even be R-ing the women. Luckily, she was ready for a career change, but the process has left her feeling jaded and disillusioned. I cried a whole bunch. I don't trust anyone. I certainly don't trust institutions. It made me think, why does society hate women so much? She said, yeah, misogyny abides, man. This isn't a process meant to solve a problem or address an issue. It's meant only to silence victims and protect the reputation of institutions. Protect the predators. One BC woman who signed an NDA to settle a sexual harassment complaint against her boss says the process left her feeling disillusioned. She said she filed her original complaint with the hope of receiving a public apology and protecting other women, but her lawyer informed her the best case scenario would be a financial settlement with a confidentiality clause. Makes me wonder about the lawyer. I think it's absurd that they're legal at all. It keeps us in the dark ages. Institutions can't grow. Society can't change or evolve when no one knows there's a problem, she said. Yeah, it's all the secrecy. Get rid of the secrecy. Alleged victim of abuse was sued for breaking NDA. You see this? This is where we're at, you guys. According to McFarlane, Many NDAs are likely not enforceable in Canadian courts, but trying to challenge them can be intimidating and expensive. Of course, so you guys know what that means. The little guy or the little gal doesn't have the money to fight these SOBs. And who do you think goes up in the ranks in these places? It's always the same story, over and over and over and over. In 2016, an Ontario woman named Sherry Thompson was sued by her mother, Eileen Wilk. Oh, this is great. Unreal. Then a village councillor in Lions Bay, BC, and her stepfather, Ronald Wilk, for publicly sharing details about her childhood sexual abuse allegations. I'm glad she did it. What kind of mother is that, you guys? You see? Sickening. In defiance of a decades-old NDA, Thompson sent letters outlining the alleged abuse to various people in the Lions Bay community after learning that her mother was running for municipal office. More of these scumbags need to be outed. According to court documents, Thompson settled a lawsuit in the 1990s over allegations that Ronald Wilk had sexually abused her for years, and Eileen Wilk failed to protect her. Eileen Wilk resigned from council. Good. They always watch those resignations or the retirements in the police academies and the police forces and all these other places. Just watch them. After the Vancouver Sun reported on her lawsuit against Thompson, and the case has never gone to trial or been settled. Susan McRae says she has hope for the first time in many years. The anti-NDA movement is a global one. In the UK, 2 private members' bills have been introduced based on model legislation developed by Can't Buy My Silence, and 67 universities have signed the campaign's pledge to never use non-disclosure agreements. You know they'll find other ways to threaten and harass, right? No Canadian universities have signed the pledge. Oh, there you go. What does that tell you, you guys? What does that tell you? A bill is also working its way through the approval process in Ireland, and the Australian state of Victoria has proposed similar restrictions. So many predators, so little time, right? Closer to home, lawmakers in the U.S. have introduced legislation that would prevent employers from enforcing NDAs in cases of sexual misconduct. I think that's why they have the NDAs. For Susan McRae, the momentum of the movement has been potentially life-saving. Last year in July, to be honest, I was bluicidal. I just was totally exhausted by trying to convince people that this is a priority, she said. That's because you're trying to convince predators. Don't ever, it's like you got to swim in a different river, a different sea. But I understand why she was upset. For the first time in many, many, many years, I feel that things are changing. Support is available for anyone who has been sexually assaulted. You can access crisis lines and local support services through this Government of Canada website or the Ending Violence Association of Canada database. If you're in immediate danger or fear for your safety or that of others around you, please call 911. And the journalist is Bethany Lindsay. So I will leave that link in the description box. Like and subscribe if you choose. Otherwise, have an amazing day or night wherever you are. Peace.